What would you do if a secret threatened to destroy the relationship you've always dreamed of? Ottavio, a businessman looking for peace, finds in Darlene's cafe and in Lara, the determined owner, the relief that his life of luxury has never brought. But by hiding his fortune, he risks losing Lara's trust and with it, the chance of true love. Octavian drove along the highway towards the small coastal town of Brenton, his head full of thoughts and a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Far from the environment of luxury and status that usually surrounded him, he was looking for a place where he could find the simplicity and peace that his frenetic life didn't offer. Brenton seemed the ideal destination. Situated between the mountains and the sea, with narrow streets and old houses, the town was known for its quiet lifestyle and the closeness of its residents. Octavian sighed as he saw the landscape change and decided that, at least for a while, Brenton would be his refuge. When he arrived, Ottavio parked his car in one of the main streets and went for a walk, feeling the fresh breeze coming from the sea and the scent of the sea air mixed with the soft perfume of the flowers in the windows. He looked around, enchanted by the modest and welcoming setting, so different from the sophisticated atmosphere that accompanied him in his life as a businessman. The desire to disconnect from the corporate routine and superficial relationships had brought him here, and he felt invigorated as he imagined the days he would spend in the city. On his walk, he spotted a small cafe with a rustic facade and a wooden sign that read, "Darlene's Cafe." The place looked like a meeting place for the community, and the quiet atmosphere immediately attracted him. He approached, and, as he opened the door, the soft sound of a bell announced his entrance, and he was immediately greeted by the aroma of fresh coffee and the sound of the customers' lively conversations. The room had light walls, wooden tables, and natural lighting that made the space cozy. Ottavio felt comfortable there, as if that simplicity filled a void he hardly knew existed. As he approached the counter, a woman with brown hair and a calm smile greeted him. Her name, as he soon discovered, was Lara, the owner and barista of the place. There was something about her that caught Ottavio's attention, perhaps her serenity or the gentle way she greeted him. He ordered a simple coffee, and Lara prepared the drink with careful attention, as if each step were a little ritual. Ottavio watched in silence, fascinated by the way she handled every detail, and realized every second that he had found an environment unlike any other. When Lara delivered the coffee, Ottavio thanked her and settled down at a table near the window, from where he could watch the street bustle with people coming and going leisurely. Sitting there, he savored the coffee, which had an artisanal and welcoming touch, as if it had been made especially for him. The taste was simple and striking, and Ottavio smiled, realizing how small details could make a difference. He looked around, fascinated by the naturalness of the environment and the feeling of peace that settled inside him. Meanwhile, Lara continued to serve other customers, always with the same calm and dedication. She greeted everyone by name, showing a familiarity that Ottavio considered rare in his life as a businessman. The connection between Lara and the cafe's regulars intrigued him deeply. He wondered how someone managed to create such a welcoming atmosphere where every customer felt at ease, like part of a big family. Ottavio finished his coffee and got up to thank Lara. When she smiled, something about her gave him a sense of honesty and resilience. He felt like asking her about her life and what motivated her, but chose to save those questions for a future visit. Leaving the cafe, he walked slowly through the city, with the sound of the sea in the background and a slight sense of belonging that he hadn't felt for a long time. In his heart, something told him that Brenton and Darlene's cafe would still play a special role in his journey. Over the next few days, Ottavio kept up the routine of visiting Darlene's cafe every morning, becoming one of the frequent faces among the customers. Each visit brought a new opportunity to observe Lara's work and the unique way she ran the cafe. He noticed that every day he felt more attracted to the atmosphere and to Lara's welcoming figure. She, in turn, began to recognize him and greeted him with a familiar smile that made him feel at home. One morning, while waiting for his coffee, Ottavio decided to strike up a conversation and asked Lara about the history of coffee. With a twinkle in her eye, she told him that the establishment had belonged to her mother, Darlene, and that she had been running it with the same love and dedication ever since. She told of the effort it took to sustain the business, especially in a small town like Brenton, where the flow of customers varied according to the time of year. Ottavio listened carefully, amazed at the strength and resilience he saw in Lara's voice. He felt a growing connection with this woman who, with so little, conveyed so much. Conversations became more frequent, and Lara began to share stories from her childhood, talking about how growing up in Brenton had taught her to value simplicity and effort. Ottavio listened to her, enchanted by her authenticity, and noticed how much those stories reminded him of his own origins before he became an entrepreneur. Little by little, Ottavio realized that his feelings for Lara went beyond admiration. There was a silent and growing attraction, something he had never experienced with such intensity. Lara's simplicity and sincerity were a stark contrast to the world of appearances and interests he had left behind when he came to Brenton. However, he knew that the truth about her fortune could complicate everything, and the weight of this secret increased with every encounter. One particularly quiet afternoon, Ottavio watched Lara chatting with a group of clients and realized that the connection she created with each person was genuine and unpretentious. He wanted to share more of himself with her, but hesitated. The dilemma between keeping her identity hidden and revealing the truth was eating away at her. He knew that to be truthful with Lara, he would have to risk the security of his disguise. Leaving the cafe, Ottavio walked along the beach, reflecting on the life he and Lara were leading. He knew he was at a point in his journey where choices became more important. He looked at the horizon, where the sky blended with the sea, and felt that Lara's presence was showing him a path of authenticity and simplicity, a route he had never imagined following. Over the next few days, Ottavio frequented Darlene's cafe more and more, enchanted by the welcoming atmosphere and Lara's presence. Watching her every day, he began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed. The discreet dark circles under her eyes, the careful way she cleaned the counter after each service, the smile that, even on the busiest days, remained warm. Little by little, he noticed that Lara was carrying the weight of responsibilities that demanded more of her than a simple desire to manage a cafe. On a quieter morning, while traffic was still low, Ottavio saw an opportunity to talk more deeply. After receiving his coffee, he approached the counter and commented on how quiet the place was at that time of day, making room for Lara to feel comfortable talking. She smiled, thanking him for the comment, and revealed that behind the cafe's quiet facade, there were daily challenges that weren't always visible to customers. With a sincerity that surprised Ottavio, Lara told him that managing the cafe represented not only a professional responsibility, but also a family one. She explained that Darlene's cafe was opened by her mother, Darlene, a hard-working woman who made the place a meeting place for the local community. Over the years, however, her mother fell ill, and Lara took over, dedicating herself to maintaining the family legacy. The cafe not only supported Lara and her mother, but also represented the dream and legacy of a lifetime. Ottavio listened attentively, feeling a growing respect for her and admiring the dedication that motivated her to face so many obstacles. As Lara shared her story, Ottavio felt that her experiences reflected, in a way, the humble origins he himself had left behind when he became an entrepreneur. He remembered his own family, who had also struggled to provide a decent life for him and his siblings. That emotional connection made him see Lara in a new light, understanding the value of the sacrifices she made and how much those gestures contributed to maintaining the spirit of Darlene's Cafe. Over the weeks, the friendship between Ottavio and Lara grew stronger. They began to talk regularly, and each meeting revealed new facets of her life. Lara shared details about her childhood, stories of little Brenton, and memories of the time when her mother was still healthy and worked by her side. Ottavio, although still hiding his true identity and fortune, opened up a little more, talking about the challenges of his career without mentioning the scale of his business. He preferred to keep a low profile, for fear that revealing his financial status might change the way Lara saw him. One morning, after a lively conversation about local cuisine, Ottavio decided to ask Lara about her biggest dreams. She smiled, as if the question had transported her to another place, and told him that, despite her financial difficulties, she wanted to turn Darlene's Cafe into a cultural space. Lara planned to hold live music events and small art exhibitions, creating an environment where Brenton residents and tourists could share unique moments and create memories. Ottavio listened to every word with interest, feeling that the cafe represented much more than just a job for Lara. It was an extension of her very essence. As she spoke, Ottavio was struck by the clarity and intensity of her dreams. He could see the sparkle in her eyes as she described every detail and felt a growing desire to help. However, the secret about her fortune kept him trapped, and he knew he couldn't intervene directly without arousing suspicion. Even so, Lara's determination to fight for her dreams inspired him to reflect on his own priorities and rethink the way he lived his life. As the visits to Darlene's Cafe continued, Ottavio realized that the connection between him and Lara was growing stronger. The meetings became part of his routine, and he looked forward to each one with silent anticipation. Lara, for her part, also seemed to enjoy Ottavio's company, and he became a confidant and friend to her. Over time, their conversations stopped being just about coffee and the city. They began to share doubts, joys, and even small daily frustrations. Ottavio felt increasingly involved by Lara's authenticity and the strength with which she kept the family tradition alive. He admired her ability to face challenges and create genuine bonds with customers and residents. However, the weight of her secret hung over him like a shadow, reminding him that for something deeper to develop between them, they would have to open up completely. Lara, who until then had maintained a certain reserve, began to trust Ottavio more, and he felt that each new encounter strengthened the bond between them. Ottavio's dilemma became more complex every day. He wanted to share his life with Lara, but he knew that revealing his true identity could drive her away. The conflict between maintaining his disguise and being honest consumed his thoughts, and he wondered what decision he would make when the time came. However, until that moment arrived, Ottavio decided to enjoy every moment with her, building a solid and true foundation for the relationship that was beginning to emerge. He knew that regardless of the final revelation, those meetings at Darlene's Cafe had awakened feelings in him that he had thought impossible to find. Lara's simplicity and her commitment to the cafe made Ottavio reflect on the values that really mattered, and he began to realize that the life he had led up to that point perhaps lacked meaning and purpose. At the end of that morning, after another conversation with Lara, Ottavio felt grateful to be in Brenton and to know someone like her. He knew that the journey he was going through would change him for good, and that the friendship he had built with Lara represented something genuine and rare. Ottavio took a deep breath, feeling the peace that this environment provided, and decided that he would do his best to preserve the bond they had built, even if it required courage and sincerity when the time came. Ottavio's routine at Darlene's Cafe became a ritual, Every morning he entered the small establishment and was greeted by the smile of Lara, who now considered him a close friend. They exchanged conversations that went beyond the superficial, exploring varied topics, from stories about Brenton to reflections on life. Ottavio felt that, with Lara, he could be himself, without the pressures that position and fortune had always imposed. He noticed that, with each conversation, Lara opened up a little more. One particularly serene morning, she commented on the financial challenges of the cafe, mentioning the weight she carried to keep it running and support her sick mother. Listening to her story, Ottavio felt a mixture of empathy and a desire to help. He understood the value of the sacrifices Lara made and admired the resilience she showed. The dilemma, however, remained: how to offer help without revealing her true financial condition. The two began to share more time outside the cafe, such as walks along Brenton's beaches and strolls through the town centre. Ottavio noticed that Lara trusted him more and more, and this closeness intensified the feelings he had been harbouring. The attraction turned into something deeper, something he couldn't ignore. Lara seemed to share a mutual admiration, expressed in the glances and smiles they exchanged without the need for words. On one of these walks, Lara commented on the need for minor renovations in the cafe. Some of the tables were worn out, and the floor showed signs of deterioration. Without thinking too much, Ottavio suggested that she set up a fundraising campaign in the town, asking residents to help revitalize the space. She thanked him for the suggestion, but revealed that she preferred to face the difficulties on her own, keeping the cafe as something she and her mother had built with effort. Ottavio admired her determination, but felt a growing desire to intervene, to find a way to help ease the burden she was carrying. Lara continued to dedicate herself to the cafe with love and persistence, and Ottavio could see that every little gesture she made reflected her commitment to the place. He admired the way she treated each customer, taking care of the details that made Darlin's Cafe so welcoming. The way Lara valued every aspect of the environment, from the layout of the tables to the preparation of the drinks, revealed a genuine passion for her work that he had never found elsewhere. As the days went by, Ottavio felt the weight of the secret he was keeping grow. He wanted to share his life fully with Lara, but feared that the revelation about his fortune would change her perception. The dilemma between being honest and preserving the bond he had built became a constant in his thoughts, and he knew that eventually he would have to face this truth. Despite this tension, Ottavio continued to enjoy every moment with Lara. One quiet afternoon, as they talked on the beach, he confessed that his life had become superficial and meaningless in recent years. Without mentioning details about his position, he explained that he had come to Brenton in search of something deeper and truer. Lara listened carefully and, with an understanding smile, commented that everyone needs a place to find themselves again. Her response touched Ottavio deeply, as it reflected exactly what he felt. With each meeting, Ottavio realized that his feelings for Lara were intensifying. The bond they had built became a connection that was hard to describe, something he knew was rare. Lara, with her simplicity and authenticity, taught him a new perspective on life, based on sincerity and the small pleasures that the world around them could offer. However, the shadow of secrecy accompanied him, reminding him that honesty was inevitable if the relationship was to evolve. Lara, on the other hand, was beginning to have feelings for Ottavio, even without expressing them directly. She felt a special connection, something she hadn't experienced for a long time, and saw in him a friend and confidant with whom she could be herself. Lara admired Ottavio's attentive manner and the way he showed genuine interest in the cafe and the community. However, she also noticed that he avoided sharing more personal aspects of his life, which led to a slight curiosity about who he really was. One full moon night, as they walked along the waterfront together, Ottavio plucked up the courage to express his affection for Lara. He held her hand and commented on how much she had helped him rediscover aspects of his own life, something he had never found elsewhere. Lara, surprised and visibly moved, thanked him for his words, but with a touch of humor, asked if he intended to stay in Brenton for long. Ottavio laughed and replied that at the moment the city was the best place for him, and that, with her there, Brenton became even more special. The following weeks brought a new rhythm to Ottavio and Lara's relationship. They continued to spend time together, and each meeting reinforced the feeling that they were building something lasting. Ottavio, however, knew that for this relationship to move forward, he would have to face the dilemma of the secret he was hiding. He wanted to be honest with Lara, but the fear that revealing it would cause her to distance herself kept him silent. Even with this uncertainty, Ottavio decided that he would enjoy every moment with Lara, cultivating their friendship and affection for each other. He committed himself to being present in every moment, appreciating the simplicity and beauty she brought to his life. Lara, for her part, also realized that Ottavio represented something special, someone who offered her the chance to experience something true and genuine. As time progressed, Ottavio's dilemma intensified, and he realized that the revelation about his fortune was inevitable. However, until the right moment came, he would continue to be by Lara's side, respecting the rhythm they were both establishing and learning to appreciate the nuances of a relationship based on honesty and authenticity. Ottavio arrived at Darlene's cafe one sunny morning, determined to offer Lara some support. He knew that despite her determination to keep the cafe running on her own, the financial and emotional burden was not small. Lara moved around the counter with the same care and dedication as always, but Ottavio noticed the slight tiredness on her face and the signs of wear and tear that only someone close to her could notice. After receiving his coffee, Ottavio watched her for a moment, admiring the way she dedicated herself to her work. He felt a genuine desire to help her, but understood that Lara valued her independence and self-effort. Even so, Ottavio decided that, in order to relieve some of the pressure she was under, he would make an anonymous donation, something that could allow some improvements to the cafe without compromising the sense of autonomy that Lara valued so much. That same afternoon, Ottavio made the transfer and, with a relieved heart, imagined the improvements Lara could make to the space. He stuck to his decision not to reveal the author of the help, as he wanted her to see it as an opportunity and not an act of charity. Even though he kept his identity and fortune a secret, he felt that the gesture was a way of showing the respect and affection he felt. A few days later, Ottavio returned to the cafe and found Lara with a fresh smile. She excitedly mentioned that she had received an unexpected sum of money, which would allow for some minor renovations and the purchase of long-needed equipment. Ottavio, containing his inner joy, offered his congratulations, saying that the news was well-deserved and that the cafe would come to life even more. Lara smiled, thanking him for the windfall, but he noticed a look of curiosity in her eyes, a slight hint that the source of the money had aroused some doubt. Lara, always reserved and careful, mentioned the donation during one of their conversations and commented on her surprise. Ottavio, keeping his expression neutral, said that the city usually supported small businesses and that perhaps a client had decided to offer help. Lara agreed, but the shadow of curiosity remained in her gaze, as if something wasn't entirely clear. Ottavio felt his heart racing, but he kept his cool and diverted the conversation to another topic. Little by little, Lara used the money she had received to make some improvements to the cafe. She organized the space with new furniture, improved the menu, and installed a lighting system that made the atmosphere even more welcoming. Ottavio, seeing the results of his contribution, felt fulfilled because he knew that the cafe represented Lara and her mother's dream. Every new detail in the space conveyed the energy and love that Lara placed there, and Ottavio felt grateful for having collaborated, even if anonymously. As the weeks went by, Lara's enthusiasm grew. She planned a small celebration for her regular customers, thanking them for their support and loyalty. Ottavio noticed the sparkle in her eyes and was delighted with the way Lara valued each person who was part of Darlene's cafe. During their conversations, he could see how dedicated she was to the idea of creating a community environment where everyone felt welcome. However, Lara's curiosity about the origin of the donation didn't go away. Time and again, she would mention how grateful she was to whoever had helped, but Ottavio could see that questions were lingering in her mind. In one of these moments, Lara commented that she would like to find out who had made that generous contribution, as she felt she should express her gratitude personally. Ottavio only agreed, keeping a low profile and controlling his desire to reveal the secret. Despite the tension this situation generated, Ottavio concentrated on enjoying every moment with Lara. They continued to meet outside the cafe, exploring the city and talking about dreams and ambitions. Lara mentioned plans to expand the cafe, turning it into a cultural space where locals and visitors could share artistic experiences. Ottavio listened with admiration, recognizing the depth of her dreams and feeling more and more involved. One special evening, as they walked through the illuminated city, Ottavio felt the urge to express his feelings. He held Lara's hand and commented on how important she and Darlene's cafe had become in his life. Lara, moved, smiled and thanked him, revealing that he also represented a special presence, someone who offered her a sense of companionship and support that she couldn't find in anyone else. The bond between them grew stronger, but Ottavio felt the weight of the secret increasing. The closeness they created and the trust they built demanded sincerity, and he knew that the moment to reveal his true identity was approaching. He pondered the possibility of telling Lara about his fortune and status as a businessman, but the fear of losing what they had built prevented him from making a decision. While the dilemma remained, Ottavio decided to continue showing his affection through discreet gestures and constant support. He believed that by acting with authenticity and respect, he could make up for the secret he was keeping. Lara, on the other hand, also realized Ottavio's importance in her life, but still felt a slight unease, as if something remained hidden. At the end of that night, Ottavio returned to the hotel with his heart divided between the desire to be honest and the fear of losing Lara. He knew that transparency was fundamental to any relationship, but he feared that revealing his fortune would destroy the trust they had built up. The dilemma kept him awake, and he wondered when and how he would make the decision he'd been putting off for so long. The next morning, Ottavio met Lara at the cafe and watched her in silence for a few moments. He felt his need to be true intensify with each passing day, and he knew that his love for her could only fully blossom if he left his fear behind. With this thought, he decided that when the time was right, he would reveal the whole truth, regardless of the consequences. What they had built deserved a solid foundation, and Ottavio understood that the price of sincerity, however high, was the only way forward. Lara began to notice small inconsistencies in Ottavio's stories. He would share about his travels and life experiences, but avoided mentioning specific details. Something in his posture and in some of his comments aroused a discreet mistrust. One quiet morning in the cafe, after serving Ottavio's order, Lara decided to observe his behavior more closely, trying to better understand who he really was. Ottavio, on the other hand, continued to maintain his usual discreet presence, participating in conversations with the same enthusiasm, but avoiding any subject that might reveal too much about his true identity. Even so, Lara noticed a slight tension, as if he were hiding something he didn't want to share. She tried not to notice, but her curiosity became constant, and the feeling that Ottavio was keeping a secret bothered her. As their relationship evolved, Lara began to reflect on the transparency she considered fundamental to any relationship. She felt a real affection for Ottavio, and the bond between them was real. However, the lack of clarity about his past and his financial situation made it difficult to move forward safely. One night, thinking about all the moments they had shared, Lara made a decision. She had to find out the truth. Over the next few days, Lara decided to ask more direct questions about Ottavio's work and his past. She wanted to understand where he came from and what had motivated him to temporarily move to Brenton. Ottavio, however, dodged with vague answers, mentioning his desire to escape the urban stress, but without revealing the real reason. Lara noticed his hesitation, and although she didn't want to pressure him, she understood that the secret affected the trust they were building. One day, while cleaning the cafe counter, Lara found one of the notifications on Ottavio's cell phone flashing visibly. The screen showed a large bank transfer, something unusual for someone who appeared to live a simple, quiet life. Lara, taken aback, looked at him with a questioning expression, and Ottavio realized that that moment represented the point at which there was no longer any way of putting off the truth. Noticing Lara's questioning look, Ottavio felt a wave of nervousness, but he also knew that this was the inevitable moment. He took a deep breath, looking into her eyes with a mixture of apprehension and sincerity. In a calm voice, he began to explain his true situation. Ottavio revealed that, contrary to what he had let on, he held a prominent position in a large company and that the fortune he had accumulated over the years had provided him with a life of luxury. However, he emphasized that, when he arrived in Brenton, he had decided to look for something that would connect him to simplicity and authenticity, away from expectations and superficial interests. Lara, stunned by the revelation, remained silent, absorbing every word. She felt a mixture of surprise, anger, and disappointment, as the man she knew was now completely different. She questioned Octavian about why he had hidden this important part of his life, and he answered truthfully that his fear of being judged for what he owned had driven him to conceal his fortune. He expressed his fear that money could influence the relationship they had built, and that his only desire was to be accepted for who he really was. Ottavio continued talking, explaining that Lara had shown him a perspective on life that he had never experienced before. He confessed that every moment with her revealed what really mattered, and that was why he valued the bond they had formed so much. Lara listened, but the feeling of betrayal ran deep as she felt that Ottavio had manipulated the situation to maintain control over the relationship. After a long pause, Lara replied in a cold tone, saying that she didn't know if she could trust him again. She stood up and, with a quick gesture, indicated the door to the cafe. Ottavio, respecting her decision, left in silence, leaving Lara alone with her thoughts. He understood the gravity of the situation and knew that any attempt to explain further at that moment would be in vain. Over the next few days, Lara tried to deal with the avalanche of feelings that had invaded her. Ottavio's presence at the cafe, which had once been a relief and pleasant company, now became a reminder of disappointment. She spent her nights reflecting, trying to understand whether the feelings he showed were real or just part of an illusion. The trust that Lara had placed in him had been broken, and she didn't know if it would be possible to restore it. Ottavio, on the other hand, suffered from Lara's absence and the void she left in his routine. He reflected on the choices that had led him to this situation, recognizing that his decision to hide the truth had destroyed what they had built together. He knew he had to find a way to win back her trust, but he understood that, before anything else, He had to respect the time and space that Lara demanded. After days of silence, Ottavio decided to write a sincere letter to Lara. He found pen and paper and dedicated himself to expressing everything he felt. He explained in the letter that, from the beginning, Lara had meant a lot to him, and that in hiding his fortune, he had only wanted to protect the simplicity of the relationship they had built. He confessed his regret and the weight he felt for not having been transparent, and that he now understood the value of the trust he had neglected. Ottavio apologized, acknowledging his mistakes and reaffirming his feelings for her from the beginning. At the end of the letter, Ottavio left the envelope on the door of the cafe the next morning before opening it and walked away, giving Lara time to decide whether or not to read his words. He knew that this letter was his last chance to show genuine regret, and that from that moment on, Lara would make her decision without any external pressure. Lara found the letter when she arrived at the cafe, and with her heart racing, decided to keep it until the end of the day. She spent the day serving customers and keeping focused on her work, but her curiosity grew with every moment. When she finally closed her coffee, she sat down at one of the tables and opened the envelope. Ottavio's words touched her deeply, and she could feel the sincerity in every sentence. He wasn't looking for excuses. He was simply expressing the weight of his choices and his regret at having betrayed the trust she had placed in him. When she finished reading, Lara closed her eyes and reflected on the feelings she still had for Ottavio. Despite her disappointment, she recognized that the connection between them had been real, and that the words in the letter didn't seem false. However, the process of forgiveness and restoring trust would not be immediate. Lara knew she would need time to decide what to do and to understand whether she could open her heart again. The days that followed brought Lara a feeling of emptiness and doubt. Even after reading Ottavio's letter, she couldn't resolve the whirlwind of feelings that tormented her. The disappointment remained alive, but at the same time, the memories of the moments they had shared and the heartfelt conversations created an ambiguity that she didn't know how to face. Working in the cafe, she tried to stay focused and serve customers as usual, but Ottavio's presence, although absent, still seemed rooted in every corner of the place. Lara reflected on the complexity of her relationship with him. For her, Ottavio had represented a chance to build something different, to share her life with someone who understood and valued her. However, the revelation of the secret shattered this vision, making her question whether everything he had said or done had been authentic. Lara struggled with these thoughts, knowing that the trust she had placed in him had been destroyed, but also recognizing that, when she read the letter, she felt sincere regret at Ottavio's words. In the midst of these reflections, Lara was looking for a way to better understand what she was feeling. She decided to take an afternoon off and walk around the town, seeking clarity amid the tranquility of Brenton. She passed through the streets, observing the familiar facades and the familiar faces of the residents, who greeted her with the same simplicity and warmth as always. She realized that this peace was exactly what she had always sought in the cafe, and that Ottavio, in many ways, seemed to have understood and respected it. At the end of the walk, she sat on one of the benches in the square and contemplated the sunset over the sea. The sky, tinged with warm tones, offered a spectacle that always enchanted her. As she watched the horizon, Lara began to reflect on the power of forgiveness. She knew that holding on to resentment kept her away from the moments she had shared with Ottavio, and she wondered if she could find a way to reconcile the contradictory feelings he aroused. Even with the hurt, Lara realized that her feelings for him were still alive. After a few days of silence, Lara made a decision. She needed to hear directly from Ottavio the reasons that led him to hide the truth. She wanted to understand, not just from the words in the letter, but from his presence, what was really going through his mind. She sent him a short message inviting him to the cafe for a chat outside of opening hours. Ottavio accepted, and the two arranged to meet that same evening when the cafe would be empty and they could talk without interruptions. When Ottavio arrived, he found Lara sitting at a table, her countenance serious and determined. He greeted her with a respectful nod and sat down opposite her, waiting for her to take the initiative. Lara started the conversation directly, asking him to explain, in all sincerity, the reasons behind his secrecy and why he had chosen to present himself as someone ordinary, while having a life so different from what it seemed. Ottavio took a deep breath and, without hesitation, began to explain. He said that the environment in which he lived, surrounded by luxury and status, suffocated him and made him question whether the people around him valued him for who he was or for what he had. He said that when he arrived in Brenton, he had decided to experience life simply and authentically, looking for a place where he could just be himself, without the layers imposed by fortune. He explained that the cafe and Lara's presence had given him something he hadn't experienced for a long time, a sense of peace and true belonging. Ottavio spoke honestly, admitting the mistake of hiding the truth and recognizing the impact it had had. He didn't justify himself, he simply expressed his feelings, saying that Lara had represented a change in his life, and that for fear of losing that connection, he had insisted on omitting it. He said that he now understood the weight of trust and that, regardless of her decision, he felt grateful for the moments they had shared. Lara listened attentively, her heart divided between the pain of betrayal and understanding Ottavio's feelings. She could see that he spoke sincerely, without beating around the bush, and she felt that, even after everything that had happened, she still had feelings for him. However, she knew that forgiveness and restoring trust were not easy processes. She thanked Ottavio for his honesty and said that she would need time to process everything she had heard. Ottavio accepted Lara's decision and pledged to respect her time. He stood up, and the two exchanged a silent look, full of emotions that words could not express. Lara watched him leave the cafe and felt a mixture of relief and sadness, aware that in order to build something real, they would need to rebuild trust step by step, without rushing or unrealistic expectations. In the days that followed, Lara returned to her routine at Darlin's cafe, but something inside her changed. She felt that her meeting with Ottavio had brought clarity about the feelings she harbored and what she hoped for her life. She understood that the strongest bonds required patience, and that forgiveness was a daily choice, something she would need to cultivate. Ottavio, for his part, respected her decision and remained present, but kept a respectful distance, waiting for her to decide on the next steps. Over time, Lara began to realize that despite Ottavio's mistake, the true feelings he had shown her had not disappeared. With each new day, she found herself reflecting on the good times they had shared and the impact he had had on her life. Although there were still doubts, Lara felt that little by little the hurt was dissipating and the road to forgiveness was becoming less tortuous. One afternoon, watching the movement in the cafe, Lara smiled as she thought that whatever the future held for her and Ottavio, they had both learned something important about themselves and the relationships they were seeking. She knew that the healing process would require time and mutual understanding, and that if they were to move forward, they would need to build a relationship based on the honesty she valued so much. Ottavio continued to frequent the cafe at alternate times, maintaining a respectful space and showing his support in a discreet way. He knew that Lara's decision was something she would have to make for herself, and that any hasty gesture could jeopardize the chance they had built. With this in mind, he continued his own journey, reflecting on the values he now considered essential and recognizing the transformative impact Lara had had on his life. Lara woke up one quiet morning, still reflecting on the conversation she'd had with Ottavio a few days earlier. Since then, The weight of his secret no longer occupied so much space in her mind. Instead, she found herself more focused on evaluating her feelings for him and the possibility of forgiving him. Working at Darlene's cafe helped her organize her thoughts, and every day made her question less what she had experienced with Octavian. The letter he had written remained tucked away in a drawer, and she felt his words touch her more deeply with each reread. At the end of the day, when the cafe was closed and the place was quiet, Lara took the letter and sat down at one of the tables, rereading each line with a fresh look. Ottavio's words, full of regret and sincerity, showed that he really understood the importance of the trust he had broken. Lara remembered the tone of his voice when he explained his motives, and felt that his actions and gestures since then showed a genuine commitment to the truth. For the first time, she wondered if making room for reconciliation might be the right decision. As she read, Lara recognized that her affection for Ottavio remained, but she knew that giving him a second chance meant accepting the gradual process of rebuilding. She wondered if she was ready for that, and with every memory of the moments they had spent together, the answer seemed to form inside her. Lara understood that love required difficult choices, and forgiveness was one of the most complex. That same evening, while walking along Brenton Beach, Lara decided that she needed to share these thoughts with Octavian. She wasn't ready for immediate definitions, but she wanted him to know that her heart was slowly opening up to the possibility of a new stage. She sent him a brief message, inviting him to meet her on the beach at dawn. She knew that the scenery represented the tranquility they so desperately sought, and that words would flow more naturally there. When the sun was still rising over the horizon, Ottavio arrived at the beach and found Lara sitting on the sand, watching the sea. He approached her, and the two exchanged a serene smile before starting to walk along the water's edge. Lara talked about the impact his revelation had had, but also expressed how much she had reflected on the reasons behind her mistake. She admitted that she still had feelings for him, but that she would need time to rebuild what they had lost. Ottavio, in silence, listened to every word with attention and respect, feeling deeply grateful for the chance to hear those feelings directly from her. Lara went on to say that although the disappointment was still there, she believed that Ottavio's regret was true, and that he had learned from his mistakes. She revealed her desire to start again, but with caution and transparency, so that they could establish a solid and lasting relationship. Ottavio replied, thanking her for her trust and promising to act honestly in every step from then on. The two spent the rest of the morning walking along the beach without the need for big speeches or promises. The simple presence of each other was enough, and the surrounding nature seemed to bless the moment with the peace and serenity they both so desperately sought. As they said goodbye, Lara felt that although the process of forgiveness was still underway, a new possibility was blossoming between them, and their willingness to build an honest future brought her unexpected tranquility. In the days that followed, Ottavio remained faithful to his promise to respect Lara's time. He went to the cafe regularly, but without invading her space, showing that he was willing to win back, day after day, the trust he had destroyed. Lara, for her part, felt that the bond between them was strengthening again, now in a more conscious and sincere way. Every gesture and word they exchanged brought a renewal to their relationship, and they both understood that, in order to move forward, they needed to value the present and stay focused on building a new story together. That morning, Ottavio arrived at Darlene's cafe, determined to take the next step. He knew that in order to move forward, he needed to reaffirm his intention to build something solid with Lara, with the same transparency that she valued so much. Ottavio prepared for the meeting with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. He felt that after the challenges, there was a real chance to start again with her, but he knew that their trust still required care. When Lara saw him enter the cafe, she smiled with an expression that mixed kindness and firmness. They exchanged a few words about the cafe and their routine, but Ottavio soon realized that they needed a quieter environment for the conversation he had in mind. He suggested they go to the nearby park, where they could talk leisurely and enjoy the cool morning. Lara agreed, and they both walked to the park, where the natural silence of the surroundings contributed to a mood of introspection. Ottavio took courage and talked about the feelings he still had for Lara and his desire to build something real with her. He reaffirmed that from now on he would value sincerity and that he was willing to follow her rhythm. Lara listened carefully, and seeing the sincerity in his eyes, felt a wave of understanding and empathy. She recognized Ottavio's efforts to correct his mistakes and gradually realized that the love she felt outweighed the hurt that remained. Lara responded by saying that she was also willing to try, but made it clear that the process of rebuilding would require patience and honesty. She mentioned the importance of keeping communication open, because only with mutual commitment would they be able to overcome the past and build something really solid. Ottavio nodded, understanding that her every word reflected the principles he now wanted to cherish. This was the start of a new chapter, and they both knew that in order to move forward, they would have to let go of their insecurities and doubts. In the days that followed, Lara and Ottavio continued to meet regularly, sharing moments and conversations that strengthened their bond. They rediscovered each other's company in a deeper and more careful way, and with each meeting, the relationship gained consistency. Lara allowed herself to trust again, and Ottavio, with sincere gestures and words, reaffirmed his commitment to the values she held so dear. Little by little, what had once been a feeling of mistrust turned into mutual security. One afternoon, as they worked together to organize a community event at Darlene's cafe, Lara noticed that the painful memories were finally dissolving, giving way to a sense of peace and fulfillment. She watched as Ottavio interacted with the residents, everyone taking part and showing affection and respect for the work she was doing so diligently. The simplicity of the event epitomized what Lara loved most about Brenton, the sense of community and togetherness. At the end of the day, as they put away the last chairs and tables, Lara looked at Octavian and smiled, feeling that the past no longer mattered. Ottavio, noticing her expression, took her hand and said in a serene tone that there, by her side, he would find the peace he had always sought. Lara replied with a nod, and in that instant they both felt that the bond they had rebuilt had become something special and unshakable. As time went by, Darlene's cafe became an increasingly well-known meeting place, and Lara, alongside Ottavio, realized their dream of expanding the place to include cultural and artistic events. Each new activity brought a new layer of purpose, and they were both involved in every detail, making the cafe a reflection of what they had built together. The atmosphere gained a renewed energy, and customers felt that the space was more than just a cafe. It was a point of union, where stories crossed paths and friendships were born. Ottavio also felt the transformation that Lara had brought to his life. He discovered that the value of a relationship was in the details and in the daily choices to commit to those who really matter. The journey up to that point hadn't been easy, but alongside her, he realized that the challenges had strengthened their relationship and taught him to see the world from a new perspective. Every day with Lara was an opportunity to renew their commitment to each other, and Ottavio understood that with her he had found what he had always been looking for. Lara and Ottavio continued together, looking after the cafe and living the Brenton routine with the serenity that now defined them. Between the aroma of the coffee, the laughter of the customers, and the conversations that filled the space, they both knew They had found what really mattered. And in that welcoming environment, surrounded by friends and clients who had become part of their lives, Lara and Ottavio's relationship flourished, based on the honesty and trust they cultivated at every step. So, life in Brenton went on, and Darlene's Cafe continued to be a haven for anyone looking for a place of peace and welcome. Lara and Ottavio, by each other's side, knew that although the past had challenged them, the future was a journey to be traveled with love and sincerity.